Muhammad's bloodless conquest of Mecca was clear proof that his movement was succeeding. And what's more, his message of justice and using peace and reconciliation as a means of delivering that message was beginning to attract huge numbers of converts. In fact, tribes were beginning to convert wholesale. By 631, the last pagan stronghold of Taif fell. Now, Muhammad was effectively the ruler of the whole of Muslim Arabia. More than 20 years had passed since he had received his first revelation. For over a decade, he and his followers had eked out a precarious existence. Time after time, they had been on the verge of destruction, but they had managed to survive through a combination of Muhammad's spiritual, military and political leadership. And finally, after a seemingly humiliating treaty, to triumph over their enemies.
Muhammad expressed and exemplified the qualities that we now see universally are characteristic of a good leader and a leader for good. Enthusiasm, integrity, then the combination of toughness and demandingness and fairness was very important in leaders universally, and Muhammad had all those attributes very clearly. I think warmth, humanity, kindness is important too. And again, if you look at the traditions of the life of Muhammad, there are plenty of examples where he showed those kind of humane qualities.
By the year 632, Muhammad had achieved almost all that he had set out to achieve. He created a level of peace and security that Arabia had rarely known. He laid out the foundations and the rules of Islam, and he created the foundations of a new Muslim community. But by this time, he was 60 years old and his health was beginning to fail. In that year, he came to Mecca for the last time, and he performed his first and only Hajj, the pilgrimage. And he gave what became known as the farewell sermon. Sitting here on a camel in the plains of Arafat, he spoke to a vast crowd with strategically placed announcers relaying his words. It was a deeply emotional speech in which, in his own words, Muhammad summarized what he felt he and his followers had achieved. O people, lend me an attentive ear, for I know not whether after this year I shall ever be amongst you again. Therefore listen carefully to what I am saying, and take these words to those who could not be present here today.
You see in the final sermon this heartfelt plea from the Prophet, warning the Muslims about certain things, advising them about certain things. You can see his worries for the future of the Muslims, and that these words are something that they should take note of, and they should hang on to, and they should be aware, because in here is a very, very important message for every Muslim.
Do not therefore do injustice to yourselves. Remember, one day you will meet Allah and answer your deeds. So beware, do not astray from the path of righteousness after I am gone.
Remember what God's earliest message was to Abraham, to Adam, to Moses, to Jesus, etc. And remember that the only real reality, the ultimate reality, is the one true God. And that God is the creator, sustainer, and judge of the universe.
All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over black, nor a black has any superiority over white, except by piety and good action.
He's saying all humans are one. God has called you from the tribalism of paganism and its pride in ancestors. But remember, all men come from Adam, and Adam came from dust. And then he quotes these words from the Quran, which really speak to our time. "O people," God says to humanity, "we have formed you from a male and a female, and have formed you into tribes and nations, so that you may get to know one another. not so that you may fight or oppress or occupy or convert or terrorize, but so that you may get to know one another.
All those who listen to me shall pass on my words to others, and those to others again, and may the last ones understand my words better than those who listen to me directly. Be my witness, O Allah, that I have conveyed your message to your people.
And he asks them, O people, O Muslims, have I fulfilled my mandate to you? And they cry, Nam. Yes, and it rings around. And he asks them 3 times, have I? And each time they reply, Nam. And I think it's a most moving moment.
Well, that's his summation of his life. So he emphasizes all the principles that he's been teaching for the last 23 years. He says, for example, there's no difference between Arab and non-Arab. Look after your family. So it's kind of summation of his life. If you did nothing else but simply read the last sermon, you will get the essence of the life of Muhammad.
The Prophet's final sermon sets the agenda for modern, contemporary Muslim society. It shows where we've failed, and it shows where we have to try to get to. It sums up the transformative mission that was the life of the Prophet.
After his farewell pilgrimage, Muhammad returned to his small house in Medina, exhausted. He had begun to have headaches and fainting fits. He tried to attend public prayers in the mosque, but he was more and more confined to his bed where Aisha nursed him. One day, he appeared to get better, and the news spread like wildfire around the oasis. But it was only a brief reprieve. On the 8th of June, 632, Muhammad died in the house of his wife, Aisha. The news stunned his followers. Some refused to accept the truth. Panic began to take hold. How could the messenger of God be dead? His closest companion Abu Bakr calmed their fears, reminding them that Muhammad had never claimed to be anything other than a mere mortal, and that only God is to be worshipped, not Muhammad. He was buried here, next to his mosque, his face turned towards Mecca, a practice still common today among Muslims. Within 100 years, Muhammad's message had spread across the world, as far as India and China in the east, and as far as North Africa and Spain and France in the west. But in many ways, his struggle for a peaceful jihad was already in tatters. Within just a generation of Muhammad's death, his closest companions and family were already squabbling, breaking out into open and bloody warfare that led to the deep schism that still exists within the Muslim world today between Sunni and Shia. But today, Muhammad's message seems under threat like never before. Many Muslims feel humiliated and condemned by the sheer power of Western culture and military might, whilst many in the West see Islam as the religion of some of the most oppressive states on earth, a violent, intolerant faith. But the question is, how much of this can be blamed on Muhammad himself? Muhammad left the world with 3 things: his faith in God, the example of his own life, and above all else, the Quran itself. Now, people will always choose and highlight those aspects of his life they want to support their own arguments whilst ignoring the rest. But if we examine his life in total, we find that he left Arabia a better place than he found it. When faced with persecution, he chose to suffer rather than to retaliate. Although he fought many military battles, he turned his back on war when he could. His ultimate victory came through peace, not through conflict. And with that victory, he chose the path of reconciliation rather than revenge. And finally, in his farewell sermon, Muhammad left us with the most important lesson of all, that we are all equal, Arab and non-Arab, Muslim and non-Muslim. A universal message that is as relevant today as it was in 7th century Arabia. And it seems to me that this is the true legacy of the life of Muhammad.